Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today we want to do another distro wars, and I want to have a look at two distributions here. One of them is Ubuntu, and the other one is based on Ubuntu, being PopOS, as you can see from your screen. We want to look at the ease of installation and the ease of getting used to the desktop, and basically a few other general factors for a new user switching over. I did want to spend a little bit of time talking about the OEM install process, because I think that this is a useful thing. If you're installing a computer for somebody else, you kind of want to do an OEM install. Many distributions are now putting that in the list. So if you boot up Linux Mint, you have your grub menu shown, and then you can go down and select the OEM install. PopOS just loads right into the OEM installer. Ubuntu by default loads directly into a live disk with the test or the install option, but there is a OEM install option inside of the distro that you download normally. And so that's kind of what I want to look at and focus on here for the purposes of this video. First, we'll have a look at PopOS. This is, of course, a customized GNOME Ubuntu build built by System76 for System76 Linux computers. So if you are looking for a computer with Linux pre-installed, System76 is one of the better computers you can get. They are more higher end computers, but they have a lot of excellent support. They are US made, and the operating system is absolutely incredible. They have done so much under the hood. I am not specialized enough in PopOS to tell you what all they did, but I can tell you they've done a lot of special modifications to help work, particularly with their hardware. And the one thing that they've done that most other Linux distributions have not is disabled the Intel Management Engine, which is a subset Linux operating system, like Linux-like operating system, we should say, that runs on the processor itself, which is a security vulnerability many people have addressed. PopOS is one of the few distros in the Linux world that actually disables that. And so that is in and of itself a compelling reason why you want to run Pop, although I'm not sure if that's necessarily something that happens when you download it and install it onto your custom hardware, but if you're purchasing a computer from them, it is definitely the case. When you go ahead and hit the download button, you have the option of your standard download and you have an NVIDIA download. Okay, so the difference is between these two is the NVIDIA obviously is geared up and explicitly used to install PopOS when you have an NVIDIA setup for NVIDIA graphics. Or you can go ahead and do your standard download for any other graphics. And one of the better options that it has, you have, of course, just their page here about PopOS. We have auto tiling. This is actually a really nice new feature that was put in the more recent version of it to give you really a lot of better options for tiling your windows. If you are a developer, then that has a lot of developer toolkits already installed by default. So that's going to make it a good choice for developers. Now, I did have a request to do a video looking at PopOS versus Fedora in terms of development, because Fedora does the same thing. I'm just not knowledgeable enough in development to tackle such a video. So I just wanted to go ahead and point that out. Ubuntu, on the other hand, this is a desktop or a distro, Linux distro with another modified GNOME desktop environment, which is really Linux for the masses. And they've done a really good job of marketing and promoting Linux. And I think that they are the company that brings more people to Linux than anybody else. And for that, they are to be praised. Whether or not it's the best operating system when you get to Linux is certainly up for debate, but we cannot deny the positive things that Ubuntu has done for the Linux community in terms of bringing people to Linux. It was the first distribution I've ever experimented with, and you cannot discount that. So let's talk real quickly before I dive into the into the desktops themselves. Let's go ahead and talk about the desktop environments. Of course, both of these by default are running a form of a customized GNOME. PopOS is closer to a more vanilla GNOME. Ubuntu is certainly a bigger deviation, but Ubuntu's changes do make it a little bit more user-friendly as far as GNOME is concerned. As far as other desktop environments, PopOS only has the one option, but it does provide documentation for how you can install extra desktop environments. Ubuntu has the community developers, which build a variety of Ubuntu builds with other desktop environments. So both of them do have those options. PopOS is a little bit more complicated. Ubuntu, you just go to the developers, the community editions list, and you look for the desktop you want and you download that one instead. So that is certainly something that is worth mentioning. So with that being said, though, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and boot up PopOS to start. And we'll have a look at what the desktop happens to look like. All right, so here we have landed on the login screen for PopOS. When we click in on this guy here, we can enter our super secret password. That's definitely not 123. And then we will go ahead and boot up the desktop environment. We are going to land on PopOS. Now, PopOS, as I said, is pretty much GNOME. They do have a couple of extra little add-in features to it that I'm going to highlight. So once we land here, of course, this is pretty much going to look like and resemble your standard GNOME. But one of the things that I want to highlight first is if you are interested in testing out or trying out tiled window managers, we actually have an option up here to do this. So here I've got two windows, they're floating on top of each other. We actually have an option down here where you can set up to tile windows. You can, it will show you here what the shortcuts are and things like this. So here's your active hint color, things like that. So if we go ahead and tile the windows, you'll see it'll kind of tile the windows. And then if we pull up another window, it's going to go ahead and retile and automatically tile your windows around. All right, so there you can, it's going to keep tiling stuff around because we have tiling enabled. If you disable the tiling, now you are free to move things around. So if you are wanting to experiment with a tiling window manager, but you still want to be more comfortable with a full desktop environment, then this is actually a very logical place to start. The other thing that I'm going to mention that is different is they do use their own custom store, which if I remember correctly, I think it is based on Elementary's store, which is actually very good. So just click in on the category that you would like, and you can just go ahead and install whatever you are looking for. Now, PopOS uses a philosophy where they do run Flatpaks and they do run repositories. By default, they do not run snaps. Whoop, I did not want to install it. I just wanted to pull it up. So you can see this one here is running from the deb package. The other one was running from your Flatpak. Now, one of the things that they have actually done that regarding the snap package is if you look at Chromium. What they actually do with the Chromium web browser, did I spell that wrong? There it is. What they actually do with the Chromium web browser is they have their option, which is a deb package. So this is the option that Linux Mint should have done. While I love Linux Mint and I do not like snaps necessarily, one of the things that Linux Mint did is they blocked you from installing snaps. And instead of packaging their own Chromium web browser, which is a very popular web browser, instead of doing that, they instead opted to just give you a dummy package saying how much they hate snaps. And that was really a wrong approach. What they did here is they gave you a Chromium web browser as a deb package, so you're not going to be installing the deb package, installing Chromium via a snap package like you will in Ubuntu. And if we go ahead and do snap list, you'll see that snap is not installed, but you can actually install it. What I did not actually test though is installing Chromium here. So I believe it would be Chromium-browser. If this is pulling from an Ubuntu apt cache, it might actually go ahead and install a snap version. Automatically installed, no longer installing. So it looks like it's... Okay, so they actually just mapped that right back down to the one that is already installed. So there you have it. Let's see. Oh, wait, never mind. Hold on. One new installed. Okay, let's go ahead and have a look at our menu. I did not test this one thing before I started the video, and I wish I had. Yeah, it looks like it just went ahead and just did the deb package again. See, unpackaging, setting it up. So yeah, it just did the same thing. So see, Snap is still not installed. So PopOS handled that way better than Linux Mint did. All right, so as far as other things, everything else that we're really going to find is going to be under the hood type items. You can see here they do not overbloat the system. We do have LibreOffice. We have some system tools, some basic utilities. Other than that, I installed Chromium. Everything else is exactly as it is. So it is a very minimal operating system, very well out of the box. Now, as I'd mentioned, the installer for this is simply an OEM installer. You boot it up and it's going to go right on into install an OEM. You install everything, shut the system down, and on the first boot, then it's going to ask you for your usernames, your passwords, and all of your other system settings. So there's PopOS. I would say it still has a little bit harder learning curve if you're just coming from Windows because it is a little bit different operating system. But if you are looking for something a little bit different and you're not intimidated by that, then that is certainly a good option. So let's go ahead and have a look at Ubuntu next. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and have a look at Ubuntu. Before we get there, I want to show you how you can do an OEM install on the basic Ubuntu ISO image. So on a virtual machine, this is a little hard, so I just kind of got to the screen and then I'll just explain how to do it. On real hardware, it's a lot easier. Because the new Ubuntu, it bypasses the grub menu, it just automatically boots the first load for user-friendly purposes. I completely get why they did it. But if you have a distro set up where it's skipping your grub menu and just booting the first option right away automatically, then you can actually get around that by holding Shift on boot. When you hold Shift on boot on the Ubuntu ISO, you're going to get this menu here. So you can start with selecting your language. Now you have the Try Ubuntu Without Installing, which takes you to the live key with the option to install or not. You have Safe Graphics. You have the Install Ubuntu Safe Graphics, and then a few other options. So what you're going to want to do is push the F4 key, and you'll get this menu here. And if you go down to hit OEM install for manufacturers, and you'll see nothing changes there, but now just go ahead and hit the option to Ubuntu install. And then when it boots up Ubuntu, then it's going to land you directly on a Ubuntu screen, and you will see that the installer says it's going to be doing an OEM install. So if you are looking for an OEM install for Ubuntu, that's how to do it. There's a lot of documentation about download the alternative downloads. You don't need to do that. You just need to hold the Shift, boot the ISO up, hit the F4 key, select the OEM install, and hit OEM or hit install Ubuntu. So here it is booted up onto the desktop. It's going to automatically prompt an installer, and notice it is install the OEM mode. So with that, we're going to go ahead and shut this machine down, and then I'm going to boot up onto the desktop so we can see what it looks like. All right, so here we are over on the login screen. You'll notice it is going to look pretty much the same. We do have an option down here in the corner. We have the option Ubuntu, which is on X, or we have Ubuntu on Wayland here. Caps lock is on, huh? I better re-enter my super secret password then. That's definitely not 123. All right. So when we get logged in over here, then we will just kind of land on the... we will go ahead and land on the desktop. And when we land over here, we see that it is still a customized GNOME. It is basically the same thing that we had before, only you can see now that it does have a bar on the side. And on that basis, it has desktop icons. On those bases, I'm going to say it's probably going to be a little bit more user-friendly out of the box. We do have a help option right here. Neither one gives us any form of welcome screen. You'll notice here that there is just a little bit more software, not a whole lot, because one of the things that PopOS did, if you notice, is that organized everything here. So there was a separate place for the Office applications. We do have the utilities in one option here, but we had another place for system tools. And so a lot of these other items would be in system tools had Ubuntu did one of those. We also have a couple games on there. One of the things that we have here on Ubuntu is we have the additional drivers. And on, if I remember correctly, on PopOS, it puts additional drivers in the settings menu, but on Ubuntu, it uses this one here. So you can see it's finding the virtual machine drivers out of the box here. And if you were running like NVIDIA or something, it would pop up with NVIDIA drivers and stuff like that. So that's all we have under that basis over there. All right, now as far as the other software is concerned, just as far as doing other things inside of the system, I don't know why I started up system settings. Let's go ahead and have a look at their store. Now, the Ubuntu store, this one is now using the Snap store. This is a change from the latest versions of Ubuntu, which was using the GNOME Software Center. The Snap store is basically a modified GNOME Software Center. It's just that it generally is going to allow you to install apt, which is all now fixed, or your Snap packages. So if we look at Kden Live is the one I tend to like going to on this one, because this will have a Snap version and it has a repository version. It doesn't really tell us which one it is until we click in on it. So you click in on it, you'll kind of see where it comes from. So the one that we clicked on is the Snapcraft version, which we can choose if we want which version of the snaps that we have. And then the other one here should be from a repository. So you can see the source says Ubuntu Focal Universe. That means it's from the repository. All right. Not sure what is going on with that. Something went wrong. User share app data. No such file or directory. That's exciting. Okay. Apparently app data is not set up right for some reason. So inside of here, we do have our system updates will show up over here. We are using GNOME 3.34. We didn't check the GNOME version on PopOS. That wasn't exactly what I was specifically looking for, which versions they use. I think they're going to be fairly similar. But you'll see any updates will pop up over here. We should see a similar thing show up in the software store in PopOS as well. It's just that that one had already been updated. This one I also updated. That just must be a new update. As far as other software available, it's, as we said, very similar. We do have a few extra tools on here. We have Live Patch, which will allow you to install some application or some updates that might otherwise require you to reboot the server. It allows you to do them in such a way that does not require the server to be rebooted, but it does require an Ubuntu account. We have Startup Disk Creator over here, to-do lists, and then just a variety of other things. We do have Thunderbird Mail here instead of Geary. I like that one. Thunderbird is definitely my preference. We do have a couple games installed. You can see Solitaire, Mahjong, Mines. Not sure if there's another one over there or not, but since I don't really play video games on Linux, I couldn't tell you if something else is here other than just telling you what the software is. We do have LibreOffice. This is something that both of them had. It should be a up-to-date version. Looks like it's not going to be version 7 yet, but we do have probably 6.2 or 6.4. 6.4. So that's certainly a completely up-to-date system. Overall, looking at the two, it does look like Ubuntu is going to be a little bit more user-friendly. We can see more clearly where the menu is. You can see that you have the option to put items on the side. Neither one of them really provide any customization as far as what the theming looks like, at least not easily. Yeah, there's going to be ways to change around some of the look and feel of it, but not nearly as much. You do have the option here on Ubuntu to change the width of the panel, though, and pretty much than that, they're otherwise the same. So which one of these is absolutely going to be better? Well, honestly, I would probably lean towards PopOS in that they've done a lot of things under the hood, which Ubuntu has also done a lot of things under the hood to make it work a little bit better. PopOS does specifically cover the NVIDIA drivers out of the box. Just grab the correct download for that. It's going to take care of a lot of your issues and a lot of your problems. Both of them are excellent operating systems. Both of them are actually available on commercially purchased hardware. So you can actually purchase computers, System 76 for PopOS. You can go Dell, HP, and Lenovo now. You can buy Ubuntu pre-installed on computers as well. They're both going to be very good. They're both easy to install. They both have OEM and I don't think PopOS has a non-OEM version to install, but they're both going to be excellent. Overall, though, since I'm not a huge fan of Snap and Ubuntu likes to push snaps first, I would personally steer towards PopOS first. It gives you the option to install snaps, but doesn't force you to have them on things like the Chromium package, which is really the big controversial one right at this moment. So anyway, there's kind of my take on these two. Let me know your thoughts on these in the comments down below. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.